help get more water and minerals into the plant through the roots. Okay, so in addition to water and mineral absorption, the roots can actually do a little bit of gas exchange. Okay, so we normally think of gas exchange happening up here at the leaves, right, with the stomata, so with our CO2 going in and our oxygen coming out. But down in the roots, it's actually the opposite. Okay, CO2 is coming out and oxygen will go in. And the roots will exchange with the air spaces that are in the soil. And like I said, oxygen will come in and CO2 will come out. And if you think about it, that does make sense. Plants do need a supply of oxygen because to be able to do cellular respiration. Yes, plants do photosynthesis and they make their own food, but they haven't converted that food into ATP yet. And so they need oxygen to convert that food into ATP. Okay, so now that we have the water in the roots, somehow we got to get the water from down here all the way up here. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that can influence that. First thing we're going to talk about is what's called root pressure. I will say right off the bat, root pressure is not strong enough to push water all the way up to the top of the plant. Okay, so root pressure, though, is a buildup of osmotic pressure down in the cells of the root stem that cause the xylem sap to raise. Okay, so I'm increasing my osmotic pressure. Basically, I'm taking water into the cells, okay, which will in turn, okay, push the xylem sap up some. Okay, but again, this is not strong enough to push it all the way up the tree. Okay, this is going to occur when there's not a lot of transpiration. Okay, there's plenty of water available to the plants in the soil. Okay. So this can cause also what's called guttation. Okay, if you've ever gone out in the morning and you've seen plants that look like this, where they have what looks like water droplets coming out of their leaves, okay, and that's going to be due to the root pressure, and the buildup of the root pressure in the evening has pushed these little water droplets out of the edges of the leaves. So again, this is going to happen when there's plenty of soil moisture available, okay, or there's not a lot of transpiration happening in the daytime. That's why a lot of times you see this guttation in the morning, when there was plenty of soil moisture and during the night. Okay, water will diffuse from the soil into the roots. So it's gonna build up in the roots, which is going to increase the pressure in the cells, and so that is going to push a little bit of the water. Okay, but if that's not the major thing that gets the water up there, we need to talk about what is. Okay, so we're going to talk about what's called the tact theory, T-A-C-T, okay, and transpiration, and how those are going to essentially pull instead of trying to push the water up the tree. Okay, so the tact theory, okay, is our tension, adhesion, cohesion, okay, transpiration theory. Okay, so tension, adhesion, cohesion, transpiration. So hopefully you remember some of these from when we talked about water. Okay, if you remember, water is polar. Okay, and so hopefully you remember that means that the water molecules have a charge, right? The electrons spend a little bit more time around the oxygen than they do around the hydrogen. And so we get that we get that slightly negative charge on the oxygen, slightly positive charge on the hydrogen. So since water is polar, remember water can form hydrogen bonds. Okay, remember hydrogen bonds are between molecules. Okay, so this is a water, this is a water, okay, and so these are the hydrogen bonds between the water molecules, not inside the water molecule. Remember, so I've got my oxygen attached to my two hydrogens. None of those are hydrogen bonds. I don't see a hydrogen bond until I get another water molecule going, and then I can have a hydrogen bond between the two molecules. Okay, so water, remember those hydrogen bonds help water create tension. Okay, you can see the surface tension here with the spider that is able to essentially walk on water there. Okay, and all of that again comes back from forming those hydrogen bonds, those polarities. Remember, adhesion was water's ability to basically stick to things other than water. And in this case, Okay, we've got adhesion to the plant cell wall, in particular to the wall of the xylem. Okay, and so the adhesion to the xylem is going to help the water not fall back down due to gravity. Okay, and then you also have cohesion. And if you remember, cohesion was water's ability to stick to each other, form hydrogen bonds with one another. So we've got cohesive forces and adhesive forces working as the water is moving up through that xylem. Okay, so they've got a little bit of pressure pushing them behind, but really, like I said, not much to do anything. Okay, but they are right now, some of the things they've got, the water has to be able to overcome gravity, is we've got this adhesion, again sticking to the walls of the plant, and then it also has the cohesion, where the water molecules are forming hydrogen bonds with one another. So we've got our tension, we've got our adhesion, we've got our cohesion. Now we need to get our transpiration into play here. We need to actually get water to be lost into the atmosphere, because when water is lost into the atmosphere, that's actually what creates the gap, the tension, to then pull the rest of the water up through the plant. Okay, so let's look at one more kind of simplified picture of this, because in case you haven't noticed, you need to really, get this down. Okay, so I've got my water taken up down here in the root. Okay, you can see my hydrogen bonds forming between my water molecules, so there's my cohesion. Okay, those water molecules are also able to adhere to the wall of the xylem. Okay, and then as this water evaporates out of the leaf through transpiration, okay, it essentially pulls on all the rest of this. And since it will stick together and stick to the wall of the cell, okay, it can help overcome gravity. Okay, so transpiration is the main way, that is the primary mechanism for moving the water, okay, up through the plant. Okay, it requires, it's due to the fact that there's a negative pressure or a tension created at the air-water interface. And so that's going to kind of lay the foundation for this transpirational pull to happen. So let's take a look at this diagram here, and then we'll be all set for today. Okay, so start down here at number 1. Whoops. Okay, so when we start, alright, so we start down here at number 1. Okay, I've got water vapor, which are my little blue dots there. Okay, so I've got water vapor going out into the air. Okay, and so it's drier outside than it is inside the plant. So there are water vapor, water droplets coming out here through the stoma. Okay, and so at first, okay, as we head over here to number 2, and we're going to work our way up this diagram on the side here. Okay, so at first, the water vapor is lost by transpiration, is going to be replaced by evaporation from what's called the water film. Okay, so if you kind of orient yourself to where you are, okay, so we've zoomed in on this area here. Okay, and so when I've zoomed in on this area here, this is still inside my plant on this left side, the blue side there. Okay, so that's inside my plant. So the water, okay, that is lost is going to be replaced by this water film. But as this water film replaces that, as that's lost, okay, it's going to create, okay, it's going to pull in, kind of shrinks this water around these mesophyll cells. Okay, so as it shrinks that water around those mesophyll cells, that's going to increase surface tension. Okay, so it's going to create this surface tension by creating this pulling here at the air-water interface. So when I've got this pulling there, that tension, that negative pressure, okay, it's going to start pulling water. Okay, so we come over here to number 4 now, okay, because you can see I've really built up that tension here. Okay, so I'm going to start pulling water now from the surrounding cells in air spaces. Okay, so here's where I originally pulled water from. Okay, but now I'm going to start pulling it from the nearby cells. Okay, so I'm going to start pulling water from the other cells, from the other air spaces. And as I start pulling water from the other air cells and spaces, I need to replace that water. And the plant will start replacing that water by the xylem. Okay, it'll start pulling water out of the xylem. And as it's pulling water out of the xylem, that's now going to pull all the rest of it all the way up from the roots. It's going to pull those, it's going to use those adhesive and cohesive forces to help pull that water like a big long water chain all the way up from the roots. Okay, so like we talked about today, kind of start brainstorming and thinking about maybe which particular factor that can affect transpiration that you would be interested in testing, so that we can get your stuff all set up.